At any moment, you notice that there's a lot in the mind, a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, whatever it might be, just acknowledging that, noticing it, and then seeing if you can just allow whatever is here from the moment before to just drift into the background. Doesn't need your attention right now. So coming to the here and now by bringing your attention to this body settling, maybe noticing if there is tension or tightness. Noticing if any judgment about the tension or tightness rises, or even judgment about the activity in the mind. And then really kindly, really gently, just bringing your attention to this moment, to this body, resting right here in the surface, holding you. And if at any moment you notice that this might be too much right now, too many thoughts, too much stuff going on, you can always open your eyes. You can always shift your pose. Holding yourself with kindness, gentleness. And now just expanding your attention to the movement of the breath in the body. You might notice that the breath sometimes is moving fast. Sometimes it's slow. So without any judgment, just seeing if you can be right here with the breath. And if the breath is not accessible to you, seeing if you can be here with the bottom of your feet, the palms of your hands. And just allowing for this moment to unfold within your experience. Perhaps as you notice the movement of the breath in the body, you might notice the body rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath. And so just seeing if you can just follow that movement. That's bringing your attention to an anchoring point right here, right now. Knowing that every time the mind wanders, you can always come back to the movement of the breath, the bottom of your feet, the palms of the hands. And the same is true if something is too overwhelming, something is too much. Anchoring right here in this moment. Where does the mind go during the pause? Just noticing where it might go and just bringing your attention right back to this body, to the bottom of your feet, the palms of your hands, or the breath, whatever is more accessible to you. And then just seeing if you can just keep your attention right here. And it's bound to wander, it's bound to get distracted. The mind is enticing. It's got narratives, it's got stories. So every time you notice the mind wandering, just coming right back to this moment, this breath, this body. Perhaps just even the awareness of the in-breath and the out-breath. And acknowledging this body that's made out of water, among other things, but mainly water. And just like the water in a lake, there's a certain stillness that it possesses as its natural quality. So the invitation to tune into this sense of being water, this body made out of water. Just noticing how water is patient. And so as you sit here in practice, just seeing if you can just embody these qualities of water. Perhaps the stillness, perhaps the current, how it just moves at its own pace. How it awaits as long as it needs to make its way through. And then just noticing what the breath does to this body of water. Noticing what happens when you pay attention to the breath. And it might as well be as similar as water in contact with the wind out in nature. There might be some times in which stillness is not available to water. Sometimes, if there's storms, if winds are hitting really hard. but it awaits. It knows it will pass. It just flows. And when water meets a barrier, it just awaits until it can make its way through. And just like that, we can say that the same qualities live in you. Water responds without despair. It awaits. It goes with the flow. It flows. And so as you pay attention to this experience right now, breath, the bottom of your feet, your hands, whatever it might be that you're anchoring your attention in, you're seeing if you can embrace this quality of flowing, of waiting, if something comes up, of staying still, of calmness if it's present for you right now. And if not, patience. It is said that it takes millions and millions of years for a river to make its way through a mountain and finally forming a canyon. But there's a quality of patience. The river does not despair. It just continues to make its way through slowly and gently until it can pierce right through stone and mountains. And just like that is this experience of sitting in practice. And you don't have to make patience happen. Just notice when impatience takes over. What is the urge that it needs to be attended? So for the next few minutes, we'll just sit in stillness, watching experience. Sitting here just like water. Perhaps the way you're sitting or the way you sit has a lot of power, strength, persistence, like a river, constantly coming back again and again, noticing distraction, aiming at being present. And perhaps that moment is more like a lake. Settle in. Calmness as an underlying quality. So without judgment, just noticing your experience. Leo, Leo Tolstoy says, patience is waiting, not passively waiting. That is laziness. But to keep going when the going is hard and slow. That is patience. The two most powerful warriors are patience and time. So for just a moment, as we come to the end of this practice, just noticing where you're present with right now, and the invitation to notice how nature is also patient, how everything has its own curves and its own cycle, and how we are all connected to that cycle. So Neil deGrasse Tyson says, I look up at the sky, at the night sky, and I know that, yes, we're part of this universe. We are in the universe. But perhaps more importantly than both of those facts is that the universe is in us. When I reflect in that fact, he says, I look up. Many people feel small because they are small and the universe is big. But I feel big because my atoms came from those stars. And so maybe just allowing for one more deeper than normal breath and a long exhale. Just knowing that your experience is your experience and is perfect the way it is. There's no right or wrong way to do this practice. The idea is to be able to be with your experience and to be here and to be present for your life. And so whenever you're ready, if your eyes are still closed, just maybe shifting your pose a little bit, tuning into the body and seeing what it needs. Maybe a little stretch, maybe a little movement, and allowing this movement to come from deep within, allowing the body to move as it needs to move without the mind being reactive to how you feel. So we're just taking a moment to invite a little bit of movement, and it could just be even a little bit of rocking around, a little bit of stretching of the jaw, whatever it might be for you. So we're exploring patience. We've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks and visiting very different ways of being patient and being with our experience. And the formal practice, sitting here, and what some people would consider doing nothing, is doing so much. It's really being with our experience takes a lot of patience. Being here and being present takes a lot of patience. And so the idea is to really notice when this waiting, this being here becomes unpleasant. And we spoke about that last week. What happens within ourselves? There's that urge to move to what is next. There's that urge to make things be different, right? And I was kind of contemplating the idea of sitting in traffic sometimes, and the light is changing and cars are not moving. And so what happens at that moment, at least for me, just exploring that, what happens at that moment is almost like there's always this sense of having to go somewhere. the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. And even for me, even if I'm just going to the next light, the next traffic light, I was learning how to drive. I used to speed up to the next light, right? I was like, green light, I will speed up, and then only to meet another light, which was red, and had to sit there for a while again. And eventually I just learned that as long as there's these lights, there's always a chance that I'm going to have to stop. And so it is in life, right? There's always a chance that we're going to have to sit still at some point to wait for something. And is it really waiting for something? Maybe that's the problem. What if we can just be without that something having to happen, right? And so there is something that comes up for me with this theme, and that is that patience is not passive, right? A lot of the times I find myself waiting, and I don't mind most of the time, waiting, unless I really want something to happen. And the illusion that I'm in control about that, right? And so when I release of that control, when I let it go, when I realize that I'm not in control, that things have its own pace, just kind of like the river making its way through things, right? It just stays there until it can make its way through. And so this releasing the control kind of helps with being patient, to just noticing. But before that, it's really important to notice that urge that comes in, as I was saying, even in driving, right? That urge to go to the next step. And how does that come, right? Because it's not the urge that's a problem. It's how we relate to it, right? So every time I feel like I have to speed up to the next light, maybe I'm feeling that I have control over the lights. Maybe I can catch all the lights. I'm believing something at that moment. And so perhaps that's something that could be worth exploring for us as we move forward in this next week, to just notice that there's always an urge. We have to keep moving. That's part of life, right? And even in this example with water or the river has its course. There's a place that it wants to get to. But however, even when it encounters an obstacle, it knows that it just has to wait, and that eventually it'll move its way through. So there's this persistence also, and sometimes this urge even comes in as a giving up. But water never gives up, isn't it? I've never seen a river that just retracted completely. Just said, oh, this mountain is too big. I'm going to retract. What it might do is divide, right? It might divide, but this waiting that we practice, is this moment of stillness, of patience, allows us to kind of have that courage to stay with a moment. And from that, to see what informs better, right? And as I was saying, when a river is coming to and meeting an obstacle, whether it's a mountain, a stone, at that moment, it might decide, and it might divide, right, around it if there's room. But at first, it's encountering it. It knows going over it might not be possible if it's really high, right? So really moving through that point of awareness and wisdom. That's the idea with patience. Can we be still enough, just like water when it encounters an obstacle or something that is not going its way, right? Maybe the river wants to go straight, but there's this big mountain in there. And it would have to stay there to find its way through, right? To find which way to go. And it might decide to take a different course before it can come back. Or it might decide to divide. There's a canyon here in the USA called the Grand Canyon. And I know you might not be familiar with it if you're tuning in from a different country, a different place altogether. But that took millions and millions of years to form. the Colorado River had to really go through a lot of stones and a lot of mountains and a lot of terrain to make its way through. And at some point, what I read once was that at some point, when it divided in this way, he couldn't find a way, it divided in some way, and he made a lake somewhere else. and then the lake eventually dried out, or wasn't as prominent, but the water found another way, the river found another way, right? And so with this patience, again, there is choice. There is choice when we sit with our own experience. But there is choice when we let go of control. There is choice when we're just here noticing, here's where I am. And if I can notice that urge to make things happen, to control, then I can just step back and see what are the options here, right? So patience is persistent. Let's not confuse patience with inaction. Patience is persistence, but persistence is persistent. But persistence is also, in some ways, not really agitating, right? I can be persistent, but with patience, that persistence comes from a wisdom point, right? Because patience can also come in as a way of being in the moment and just observing the moment before taking action. And I think there's a bit of confusion sometimes with this, that we think that being patient is doing nothing or just waiting forever. Oh, you're so patient. You waited 3 hours until you got your name called. Maybe not. Maybe patience is just knowing, okay, maybe while I wait, what are some other ways that I can make things move, that I can move towards something, if that's what I'm working, because we're always working towards something, isn't it? Even in our meditation practice, we're working towards stillness, towards something, towards knowing our experience. We're practicing constantly. We're persistent, just sitting here in silence. And so this is just all I wanted to share with you today, and maybe just contemplate that idea of what it's like to be present with patience. And what is it for you? What is it like when patience is not present and when impatience takes over? What is that like? What is the urge behind it? Is it an illusion? Right? Is it an illusion that we can control and make things happen? And what is more beneficial at the end? So just noticing that. And it's not really a lack of action, but it's, as with everything we do in mindfulness, our actions are always informed by wisdom. And wisdom comes by being present in the moment with our experience and seeing what is the next move? How do I go about this? Like I was saying in the river example, right? The river finds its way. It can make an entire canyon, but just going through, but it takes millions and millions of years. It takes a long time, and it still stays and makes its way through. So there's a little short story that I wanted to share with you, and this is from Buddhist philosophy. So it's a kind of like a Buddhist story with a Buddha. And I found it just interesting, so I just wanted to share with you. It says that the Buddha one time asked a disciple to go get him water, to fetch for some water from a lake. But the water was really muddy due to a wagon full of livestock that was crossing. So the disciple goes one day to the lake and sees that the water is muddy and comes back and tells the Buddha, the water is muddy, so I couldn't bring you any. So the Buddha says, well, try it again. He goes again, same thing happens. And the disciple starts to grow impatient, right? And so this is the idea, to notice what happens when you're impatient, right? He was getting frustrated. He was impatient, coming to go back and back. And why isn't the Buddha understanding that the water's muddy? We're not going to be able to drink it. And so the disciple goes again and again until he goes back and the water has settled, the mud has settled, and he's able to see that the water is clear now, and he can bring water to the Buddha. And so the lesson is that if we wait long enough, the mind will settle, our emotions will settle, everything in our experience will settle. And this is the patience that we have to cultivate in our practice. That's the invitation. That even when you're sitting here and there's so much going on and there's so much you want to do, if we just stay with that for a moment, it will eventually settle. Eventually the mind will settle. Emotions will settle. And so the idea is to just cultivate this sense of being with our experience. And so with this exploration of patience, I just wanted to share that with you, and maybe to leave you with something that you can practice for the next week or so. And we're going to continue to explore this weekly, this attitudinal foundation of patience. And you probably see that that's one of our guidelines in our community, because they come from the attitudinal foundations of mindfulness. And so we have plenty of opportunity to practice that with work here, sharing with one another. And so to notice really when somebody might be sharing too much and there's impatience coming in, moving on, wanting to go do the next thing. When somebody's sharing in your small group, right? And so noticing what is your experience at all times and tracking that is what is important to notice when impatience is coming in and is taking over. And who are you when you're impatient? Who do you believe? Right? Are you believing your inner wisdom, or are you believing the mind telling you stories about how the world works? So something that I wanted to leave you with, and I really thank you so much for your kind attention, for being here, for practicing with me. It's the highlight of my Fridays. And so it's good to see you, and you're always welcome here. So yeah, thank you.